Good morning, everybody. So realizing that I'm the person that's standing in the way between you and lunch, I will try and make this relatively brief. My name is Jay Kim, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Upskill. Thanks for the Nagarro team in Austria for inviting me to speak on this, and then for all of you for coming. So what we're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so is to really kind of go deep into the term that you probably have heard for the first time ever today, and that is the term assisted reality. And what we're going to talk about is to use it with a set of case studies as well as a demo. I think by now some of you may be suffering from slideware fatigue, and the goal here is to try and make this somewhat interactive and try and make this more of a real concept to you. So Upskill being by far the smallest company in this room, I feel compelled to give you a one-pager on what we do. And our mission is to transform hands-on work. So we've been doing this for the last 7 years, going on our 8th. We've been globally recognized as one of the leaders in the space. And then here's a list of a subset of the customers list that we're speaking of that we can reference publicly. And one of the things that we have been really seeing over the last 2 years or so is an increase in activities in Europe. Europe and particularly in the Germany, Austria type of a region is where Industry 4.0 as a concept was really born and then implemented for the very first time. So it comes as no surprise to us that we're starting to see a lot of projects that are kind of getting out of that initial pilot phases and seeing a lot more interest, which I think can be reflected by the attendance in this room. So when you talk about AR broadly as a concept, this is no longer kind of in the idea of science fiction. This is very much an operational reality. And some of the metrics that are being tracked is efficiency. You see an aggregate amongst the customers that have participated in a case study with us. You see an aggregate number of 30% efficiency gains. So for those of you that are in manufacturing or that are in the supply chain side of the business, 30% in efficiency gains it's a game-changing number. I mean, most of you, I'm sure, that are in the supply chain side of things, go and fight for 2 to 5% incremental gains in efficiency gains. So this, one of our customers that I'll talk about later on, talks about this as a step function change because it's not a slow curve, but it's a full step, and the impact that drives is extremely powerful. If you talk about quality assurance, being able to make sure that the products, whatever the products may be, whether or not that's hard goods or soft goods, is conforming to the different quality standards that you have in place is a huge metric that you see and that will become apparent. Compliance, especially in the digital age when more and more systems are turning into digital and you're with Industry 4.0, you're starting to see kind of the cyber-physical marriage of different processes that are happening in your operations. You're starting to see compliance be even a greater need as to what that brings to your workforce. So again, it's compliance, not necessarily within your operations, but this is all about needing to go and bring your people into the loop. Safety. So one of the things that James didn't actually talk about, but something that is hugely important to us and our customers is that these are smart safety devices. The glasses, and there was something about user acceptance and conformance and other kinds of things like that. Some of the best applications that we have done at Upskill as a business tend to be around applications where safety eyewear, for example, is being worn, which is the case in many manufacturing and service and even some logistics applications. So when you're turning the thing that you put on your face into something that is capable of giving you more information and help you work more efficiently, this now becomes a no-brainer. And then, of course, all of this is really trying to go and get more out of your people. It's not necessarily that, this technology exists to go and eliminate jobs, which is a common misconception, I think, when people look at this kind of technology. People tend to group kind of AR into automation. And what we're seeing universally is that that's very, very far from the truth. The role that technology providers like ourselves are bringing in, and we believe in it so much that we actually named our company after it, is the ability to go and actually deliver an upskilling effect to the people that are doing the work. It's not necessarily that you're helping the person do a particular task that he or she knows how to do more efficiently, but it's also about, as more and more people change roles, I think it's safe to say that people that are, the days of people working 30, 40 years in the same job and same job roles is no longer the case, because of, economic changes and maybe just personal desires with the generation that's coming on board. People are more likely to go and switch roles for a number of different reasons. And the role that technology like this tends to play in really centers around the fact that how can you move from one job role to the next, whether or not that's because you're getting promoted or you're switching jobs more effectively. And that's why AR has such a profound effect on some of the largest businesses that face the same kinds of sets of challenges associated with developing their workforce, training them, and then getting them to the performance targets in a world where there's increased competition, particularly coming up from some of the emerging world. Assisted reality, very fundamentally, is just going from left to the right. So one of our customers, GE Aviation, what's on the left is a service manual for their CF-34 engine, which goes into many of the regional jets. What if you can go and take away someone having to go and flip through this stack of paper, trying to go and locate the right position within their manual, to the Glass Enterprise Edition running our software to the right, where you have the ability to go and dynamically search and navigate and also call upon other people to be able to be more efficient. Visually speaking, this is a very powerful image because this very fundamentally is what assisted reality is doing. James covered some of these things. So going into some of the things that we have actually built at Upskill with a product perspective, you're going through the three different parts of the product life cycle. So people that are in the build, user persona, people that are in the move, and service. And what we are trying to go and solve for, and I'm going to get somewhat technical here for the next 2 minutes, is to be able to go and have a common platform upon which all of these different use cases can be powered, as opposed to looking at this as a manufacturing application, a logistics application, and then a service and inspection application. What we bring to the table with our partnership with Nagarro and the Glass team is really all about trying to go and centralize this into a common platform that could be deployed enterprise-wide. What does that look like within the context of the assisted reality? Simple. We've got the platform that is a core set of services that are deployed either on-premise or in the cloud. And then up top are your smart devices. Here's an example of some of the devices that we support. Applications are built on top of it using our platform. Some of the example applications you can go and read for yourselves tend to be in assembly, in picking use cases, service and inspection, process checklists, and knowledge capture documentation. And then, last but certainly not the least, all of these applications with these glasses really don't deliver the value that we need to unless they connect to the systems of record. And some of these are lots of three-letter acronyms, but at the end of the day, these are systems that most of you, if not all of you, have in some way, shape, or form in your own business. These are the systems that you're using to go empower your own business today. Your ERP, so SAP, Oracle, IBM kinds of systems, and field service management systems for those of you that have that employ a significant amount of field service workers in your operations. This is how your business works, and what assisted reality does is basically taking those systems and extending the reach of that to what James called the hands-on workforce. Some of the examples here really touch on the 5 high-level feature sets that are found in the platform as a building block. Task guidance, so being able to go and use voice, touch, and different kinds of input modalities to be able to get your step-by-step work instructions. So think about that as the the big manual that you saw, being able to see that right in your eyesight. Checklist is a simpler version of a process management application, a task guidance application where you're just going through a predetermined set of steps and then capturing photos and videos and other kinds of assets to make sure that the work in fact has been done, because the other component of assisted reality is being able to go and capture information right from the point where work is being done. So it's not just about taking all the information that's in your systems of record and pushing it down to the user. The information that's collected actually from the field can be leveraged to go and get even greater insights into the different operations that that your workforce is actually seeing, so that you can use that in an effort to go and improve your processes. Live help and connected tools and objects are some of the things that you'll see a demo of. And you know, on the connected tools and sensors, here's a really simple example, also done at GE Aviation, where you're seeing just a simple stoplight. As you're going and torquing down a particular piece in your overall process of an engine, does it in fact actually come into the range? So that screen, while it may be very trivial, is actually showing you a number of different things that we already talked about. Skylight is connecting to the product lifecycle management system to be able to extract the information on that particular part of the process, having an acceptable torque range of 51 to 55 inch-pounds. So, and then it's connecting to your IoT-enabled torque wrench, and it's getting that reading, and it's constantly checking that against the validated ranges associated with it. And then lastly, it's giving the user a visual cue when the piece actually comes in, when the particular torque range becomes within the acceptable figure. And then lastly, it takes that figure and writes it back associated with the technician, the specific task order number, so that information that was done within that particular piece of the process now ends up being a data point that goes back into your maintenance process. Incredibly powerful. I've been showing this graphic probably for the last 2 years. It remains one of my favorite graphics because it helps you kind of unpack what assisted reality means within the broader spectrum of augmented reality. So if we go and start from the right, which is your registered and immersive AR kinds of experiences, this is the stuff that you see in science fiction, Minority Report, being able to go and see floating screens, kind of up in the air, being able to use gestures and other kinds of methods to be able to manipulate objects. And you see that in some of the promotional videos that are being done, not the least of which, and I'll pick on James and Google a little bit, was shown for the very, very first time when Glass was unveiled. Floating screens, people are saying stuff, and things are just moving, and it just looks magical. Guess what? You can't get it today. Unless you've got, a multi-billion euro budget to be able to go and roll this out, this is not real. And I hate being that person that burst a bubble, but it's absolutely true. But let's assume that once we get there, once we get to the right, immersive AR everywhere, consumer enterprise, that whole concept, and there's no question that that's coming. How do you get from where we are, where you've got a stack of manuals about this deep, to the registered AR experiences? And what the proposition that I'll make here to the room is that you get there first by getting to assisted reality. It's by far, for the reasons that are evident here, being able to leverage your own data sets, being able to go and use any number of smart glasses that are available in market today to be able to go and deliver non-immersive but contextually relevant information to the person. This is creating 30% plus in efficiency gains today. And this is technology that you have access to today, and many of your peers, whether or not it's here in Austria or elsewhere in Europe or in North America and Asia, are doing it today. This is something that, if you look at the rollout of augmented reality as a part of a multi-year long change management process, no one ever goes from 0 to 10 without taking some incremental steps along the way. And as far as where the industry sits, this is by far the most mature solution, and this is something that you can go and access. The next logical step that people are taking is around things like Microsoft HoloLens and more of what people are calling mixed reality. So being able to go and have a large multi-screen type of an experience with some ability to go and convey information out into the field. That technology is accessible, and I would say that it's scalable today with some number of caveats, but as you go and transition from the 2D world to the 3D world, even in the context of mixed reality, the challenge is all around content. How many of you in this room own enough of the 3D content around your parts and diagrams and other kinds of things like that are capable of being delivered to, let's not even talk about the HoloLens, but into a tablet today? Just quick show of hands. Anyone have 3D data? So some, but a very small portion of the room, and that's actually pretty accurate once you go and take a look at it. It all comes down to content. When you're talking about delivering information to people, you first have to have the information. It's as simple as that. And it's not to say that the information isn't going to be there permanently, but this also takes a generational kind of a gap, as products are now being designed using CAD tools as opposed to on pen and paper and other kinds of things like that. Many enterprises are still in the process of actually collecting that information so that it can eventually be delivered to someone. So certainly there are some caveats there, and but it is clear that that's where the technology is going. So let's do a quick demo. Any questions so far before I go and jump? Yeah, good question. So, glass and other kinds of assisted reality devices are certainly capable of using the built-in camera to be able to pick up simple codes. Codes that have a known characteristic. So QR code is a great example. One-dimensional barcodes as well. The thing, though, when it comes down to being able to go and leverage known kind of the codes and being able to use the camera to see things is that it comes down to ergonomics. So being able to go and see QR codes is a feature set that we support in the software, as well as Google supports it natively within the tool. With many of the different things, the best example that I can give you is that you're talking about being able to go and see a particular piece of barcode that may be a meter away, and you may be seeing multiple barcodes that are within the same kind of the field of view of the camera. So how do you go and properly frame that particular marker so that you can go and identify what that looks like? So long as those kinds of best practices are adhered to, glasses can go and pick things up. But you first have to go and properly frame it to be able to convey that information. Hey. That's correct. Okay, so I'm going to go and switch to a simple demo. And I recognize that this isn't going to be videotaped very well, but I've got basically two screens that are laid out. One is the Skylight Web feature. So this is our web dashboard, and it's also the ability to go and create workflows within this. Right here is a screencast of what's being shown on my glass device. So as I go and use the touchpad, and I know that most, if not all of you, have actually used this as you were in the process of checking in, so you know how the touchpad works. It's basically following along with a small amount of latency because I'm hardwired in. and there's some, you're not getting the full frame rate. So I can go and step in, for example, and say, hey, Skylight. Hey, Skylight. I shut voice off just because of the echoing. So I'll use the touch to go through, but if you want to see the speech working in action, find me after the demo and I'll give you the full workthrough. I've had lots of experiences actually with people that have German accents that speak English, and it works surprisingly well. So here you've got an entire process that's pulled down. So you've got the maintenance history and the different work orders that are coming through. So the history of all the job that was done against this particular piece of equipment, which is the Douglas KDCP 291. And you also go through the step-by-step procedure of being able to go and do the particular pieces of the process. And I can go and capture a photo, and I'll just take a look at the computer so that none of your faces are on it, and then you can go and complete the task. Next, if there's some sort of an issue that comes up in the inspection process, you have the ability to go and pull up a maintenance flow. Being able to view a parts list, for example, is a pretty standard thing that we can go and convey. And in this particular case, we've included the pictures of the parts so that as people are pulling together and identifying the different pieces, that they know what it is that they need to go and look for. You can also watch a reference video, and this actually alludes to some of the training components that have been mentioned before, where in this case, this is a training component of how the pieces actually come into the engine. And again, the video here is smoother in my line of sight, although you see some jitter here. One of the new features that we've built in is the ability, we call this the application builder. It's the ability for your own people that know your business processes to be able to create their own workflows. So for example, I'll have the ability, if you look at this, this is the familiar kind of the maintenance history, reference videos. And I can go and jump into one of the processes in step 1. For example, between steps 1 and 2, I have the ability to, for example, drag and drop the ability to go and do a capture photo task. So this is again one of us applying one of the lessons learned in working with so many of our customers, where the game isn't necessarily to go and have a significantly large number of developers going in and tweaking every single bits and pieces of your integration. Although I'm sure our friends at Nagarro would love that, but the reality is that there has to be the ability for some of your own people to be able to go and manage parts of the processes that are critical. And this is what this does, is that it's not a tool that's meant to replace the need to go and do integrations altogether, but it's simply a matter of being able to empower your own people that have familiarity with your own processes to be able to prototype, and in some cases also take some of those prototypes into limited amounts of production. But as you go through, you'll be able to go and add in an image, for example, attach some sort of, and I'm just going to keep it to just a simple icon. And you can see that some of the network holdup is preventing the images from loading. So you have the ability to go and basically attach your own photos, your videos, assets that you've already have in place, and you can go and do all of these things without having to go and write a lot of integration code. And that particular piece is a brand new feature that we've incorporated that we actually showcased in Germany a month ago at one of the big shows in augmented reality. So that's the application builder piece. And as far as the demo of the basic functionalities, this is about what I wanted to go and show you. Excuse me. And switching into where we were before, I love to actually now leverage some of this and go and do a deeper dive into some of the case studies. One of our earliest customers is the Boeing company, and the numbers again here speak for themselves. You've got a large number of wiring that that is in a 747, 171 to be exact. So this is a massively complex piece of equipment that has to be built from the ground up and mostly by hand. And Boeing altogether within their commercial airplanes portfolio has over 5,600 aircraft in its backlog. So it's not exactly like they can go and take their time to go and build all of these things, because each of these aircraft is something that that Boeing has to go and deliver and put into service to their airline partners, so that they can go and recognize revenue off of it. So being able to go and execute against the backlog and do it in time and do it against the proper quality standards directly affects their bottom line. One of the ways that they're looking to go and do that is to go and increase production rate, primarily using the same set of resources. It's not like Boeing can go and build a brand new factory to be able to, say, okay, let's go and make more 737s. That's a multi-year, monumental amount of process. So we talked about resource utilization, and this is where this comes into play. How do you go and leverage your existing assets, make some small targeted improvements, targeting your people, but also your equipment and some of your processes, to be able to get to what basically amounts to a 30% gain. 30%, you see that number again starting to get tossed around, to over 3 years to be able to get to the targeted production rate of 57 airplanes, 737s every month. One of the processes that they really identified is labor intensive and also prone to errors is building wiring harnesses. It's still a process it's done by hand, because it's actually a great example of a process that can't be automated as easily. There is lots of unit-to-unit variability. So not all wiring harnesses are kind of created in a template like you may, for example, in a car. But these are items that are built to order, and the different configurations that has to go in has to be reflected on each of the different parts. So there's certainly a lot of room for error, and as a result of that, productivity suffers. And being able to go and properly train these kinds of technicians to enable them to build things the right way the first time every single time, so that you're effectively trying to go and eliminate the need for rework, is a huge metric that Boeing was trying to go and track. So within that particular process of an aircraft build process, they're doing it with assisted reality. And what you're seeing there is, why they're choosing to go and do it, which I've got a wonderful video that I'm going to show you guys on this, is that it's hands-free. It's delivered by voice, so it truly creates a hands-free user interaction to data. And what they wanted to go and do is to leverage their existing database of information in their build process and deliver that to the user. So without further ado, I will just step aside and let the video speak for itself. I'll narrate it. So this is in one of their factories in Arizona, and that particular piece is called a pegboard. Depending on your level of comfort associated with flying, this is going to either make you feel really good about flying or really badly about flying. There's a great example. You have someone that's bound to a particular laptop-driven workstation, and it's distracting them from the point of work, going back and forth. And for those of you that are familiar in a manufacturing process, that's a classic example of motion waste that's also creating deviated focus, which again can end up in an error. So here you're seeing an example of someone who's using the wake up word, OK Skylight, to be able to actually speak on the particular PIN number that's associated with that part. So it's not necessarily that that manual that you saw, that paper manual, is being followed through step by step, but it's actually allowing people to be able to freely search through all of the available permutations of the parts, because it's not necessarily that all these things have to be done in an exact order, but it has to just be done right and go into the part. So this is a good example of a manufacturing or a service process where the sequence at which that you do the work does not matter. But obviously the end product and the quality associated with it does. So, one of the things that I saw, people gesturing was, do you need to go and flip through a whole bunch of different pages within your glass screen to be able to get to that right part? The answer is no. You're either going through it sequentially, and that's because the process that you have governs that you do, or you're able to go and use voice and other kinds of methods to be able to freely locate and identify what needs to happen. And this was one of the examples of being able to actually say, once we went and put glass devices on people, the reception that we got was that of the, hey, this is really helping me work. Don't take this away from me. Boeing is an American equivalent of, Boeing has the American equivalent of a workers' council, effectively, a massively unionized workforce. And where we actually started, to be perfectly honest, was to go and target some of the applications where there wasn't so much governance around these kinds of things. But from a process management perspective, we always start with a group of people and sponsors and champions that are receptive to the technology and can go and generate results relatively quickly, to be able to also start engaging the process with workers' councils and others to get buy-in from the start. Because one of the lessons that we learned is that if you go and mature the technology without the involvement of the users from the very, very beginning, then then the whole program can be at risk for not being able to go and meet that very key criteria. This is something that we see fairly commonly. Whoops. So I like talking in terms of numbers. So I'll share with you some of the real numbers that were discussed in that video. We targeted 400 people in a particular location at a Boeing facility. There were 400 people that do that particular work at Mesa, Arizona. How that expands out, if you look at Boeing enterprise-wide as a business, is that people that are going and building those wire assemblies, Boeing employs about 2,500 of them in-house. And then if you go and look at this as a solution down their supply chain, there are thousands of people down their supply chain all over the world that are creating some of these assemblies as well. So that's the near-term scale opportunity for this particular project that was done. And then as you go and look at expansion past some of the wiring activities that are going on, so targeting reminder, build, move, and service. So there are maintenance operations, there are parts warehousing operations, as well as other steps within the build process that this technology is a good fit for. This now translates to about a quarter of the Boeing workforce, which is 40,000 people globally. And that's one of the big visions that Boeing went and laid out when they first got started on this. And insofar as to say that this becomes such a critical piece of technology that they're compelled to go and make an investment into our business at Upskill, and Boeing now is one of our institutional investors. And here's the reason why. 25% savings in productivity, just in terms of time to completion of that particular build process. They saw a 25% increase in their efficiency. And then equally as importantly, what they have seen is that their rework rate of this particularly complex part that was being done by highly trained technicians went from 3% to effectively 0. You never drive it to complete 0, so let's be honest. But once the first pass of this was being done and the proper procedures are being kept, they saw the error rate be driven to effectively 0. which to them, elimination of that rework is something that they would have gladly gotten without even that 25% efficiency gains in the build process. Implementation challenges exist. This exists for every single large projects that we have gone and done. So I'd like to go and cover some of them that actually we find to be relatively common. So, device management was one of the key pieces. How do you go and, as you go and introduce these kinds of devices, wearable and then mobile, how do you go and secure this? This is, these are some of the, from an IT perspective, these are problems that seem not necessarily close to home, but once you actually go and scale this up, these things become blockers in being able to drive even more scale. So what we did was to work with the Glass team as well as the AirWatch team from VMware to provide support, with our software as well as the Glass hardware to allow AirWatch, which is their device management system of record, to be able to go and manage the devices a lot like they would on as a mobile phone or a tablet. There's the concern, of course, at the time when Boeing made the initial decision to go and proceed with the project, there was a lot of concern about, is this an investment that we're making into a single particular device that may or may not, continue on. And one of the things that we did from a provider perspective was to give them a device agnostic platform against which they can go and upgrade different devices. So an important fact here is that Boeing originally started the project with us actually on the original Glass Explorer Edition device. And what we delivered to them is that as the Glass Enterprise Edition started coming online, we were able to go and seamlessly upgrade them without having to go and do another round of development of our software. And that particular piece is very, very powerful. Last not least, I always save the best for last. There's an IT authentication, approval, security, you name it, all of those different components. Skylight is by design as a system that is meant to go and integrate into some of the very pieces of the process that governs how Boeing works as a manufacturing company, as a services company, and being able to authenticate into those systems require our own systems to be audited, and that shouldn't be a surprise to any one of you. And this is really table stakes. But as an investor into, and Boeing has worked with us since 2015. So as an early investor into this process, these were problems that they had to go and solve earlier on, and of course the benefits of which now is available to those of you in the room. As in, we've had to go through a significant amount of security audit, being able to go and deploy on-premise as well as into various cloud configurations to be able to harden the system and conform to the security standards. Some of the other examples of the case studies that span across just past manufacturing this is what James mentioned as the order picking example. And here, I've got a different version of the video that I don't have to narrate. It's really self-explanatory. It's side by side, and you're seeing one with assisted reality and the other without. I paused that video particularly at that step because it's that particular motion of having to constantly go back to the workstation to get that new order, to be able to figure out what to do next, and not having to go and fumble through stacks of paper is what's yielding 46% in savings. So here, rather than trying to go and transform the entire process, by simply being able to go and take the existing information, digitizing it, and providing access to it using a heads-up and a hands-free type of a method on glass, and eliminating that trip to the workstation, which, if you were paying attention on the left side of the video, that operator was doing 3 or 4 times through a relatively simple pick process that lasted 15 minutes. The savings, again, here are massive. And here's an example of what that person was seeing. So it's giving you, within that particular type of a pick cart, the specific location as to what they're supposed to see. This is a pretty simple type of a process. Another example is at one of our customers, and also incidentally an investor, GE, at their renewable energy operations. So if you see, GE is one of the largest manufacturers of the wind turbines that you see now everywhere as a renewable energy source. So similar kinds of a thing. How do you go and build them quickly? Because the demand for it is huge. And if you've been reading some of the things recently about GE recently, they also are very, very cost sensitive, even more so than ever, because some of their bottom line and their margins are being affected. Again, I'll let the video here speak for itself. So here, if you saw the progress bar that was being made, you saw actually that the technician was actually faster using the conventional method in being able to reference the paper manuals than using glasses and using voice-driven commands to be able to navigate to the next step. So here is the piece where I get to reveal the detail that this was the very first time that that technician was using glass. After a little bit of classroom training, to be able to say, okay, this is how you go and fit the device, these are the words that you say to be able to navigate through the next step, so on and so forth. This was the very first time that the technician used that. So if you see that, and you're able to go and yield a 34% faster work process associated with that, imagine what this means when it's multiplied across the entire population that's doing this particular work at GE Renewable Energy, and the subsequent kind of gains as that is being achieved as a person actually gets accustomed to the design. So these are incredibly powerful videos, so much to a point where these videos were actually featured as a part of an article that ran earlier this year in the Harvard Business Review, and the title was "How Augmented Reality is Transforming Work," and it was written by the chairman of our board, and the chief economist at General Electric, showcasing some of the things that they've done in the space. So this is an example of technology that's just real. And these are some of the things that we wanted to go and share with you. So I'll finish up stepping through some really quick examples, mindful of the time. GE Aviation, you saw some of the examples. In a highly automated manufacturing environment, Jabil is one of our customers. So unlike Boeing and GE that make very large pieces of equipment, Jabil is a contract manufacturer that has the capability of making, fine electronics ranging into all kinds of different goods associated with it. Different parts of the manufacturing processes are highly, highly, highly automated. But as a particular subassembly moves from one component to the next, so from one part of the automated process to the next, there's still human intervention. And again, being able to go and handle that more efficiently and effectively, and also allow the people that are on the factory floor to be able to effectively manage all of the different automation that's going on from a line monitoring and status perspective, yields a massive amount of savings. And in this particular case, the payback period that they were able to go and see with the rollout of this technology was actually measured in months. So this is something that reaches a break-even point for many customers within the first few months of deployment as opposed to in years, which also is what makes it very unique. And then the last example is consumer packaged goods. You may have heard of them, called Coca-Cola. Again, example of a massively automated operation. Bottling is a highly, highly automated process, but as a particular operation goes from one process to the next, there's still people that are in the loop. They call this line changeovers, which is relatively common in automated manufacturing environments. And again, this is a human process. It's labor intensive, and it requires a set of skills so that you're not actually breaking the machines, and it's got enough variability that's built into it that it can't be the people can't be fully automated out. So again, this is about being able to go and enable people to be able to work in concert with all of the different automation that's going on. And what that translates to is higher manufacturing throughput for them, which of course affects in the bottom line. These are big numbers up there. So as opposed to, some of you may be asking the question as to, is this something that I need to go and invest in right now? And I think it's the slide here is really meant to be a provocative statement as to if you're getting 15% efficiency gains across your workforce and some representative samples of it, what does this actually translate to in terms of your annual savings? Now, in reality, in order for you to be able to go and reach this kind of the state of steady state savings, there's investments that you're going to have to make, early on in the process so that this ends up actually turning into something that's achievable. I'm not advertising that we can go and deliver this to you right this second today, but if you don't start on your way to go and get to this, then ultimately this is something that I think we're starting to see with just the growth of our business being an example of it. This is something that people are actively starting to go and invest in. So, the question here is, are you going to be, one of the leaders that are pushing the envelope on this, or are you going to be a fast follower? That's okay. Either way is okay. Ultimately, I think even more so than ever, I can stand here with a high degree of confidence that this is something that you're going to invest in one way or another. So stepping away from the reality for a bit and just kind of ending with this particular piece of information, being that the speakers here come from the different parts of the domain, IoT experts, cloud computing experts, machine learning, and of course, assisted reality experts. How all of these things actually work together, and it's important that people understand that these things are actually working in concert as opposed to being discrete concepts wrapped under this broader kind of aspect of Industry 4.0, is that the industrial IoT really goes and creates a lot of data. Data about your operations, data about your factory, and maybe even data about your people. And that's layered on top with cloud computing, which is native to kind of it's really native in the idea of networking. And cloud computing aggregates that data and applies machine learning and AI to be able to turn that data into information. That information is absolutely useless unless it's acted upon. And this is where assisted reality really comes in, assisted reality comes in to turn that information and that intelligence that people have about their operations, and that turns that into action. And action, of course, is all about productivity, quality, compliance, safety, and utilization, the 5 concepts that we went and talked about. So this is my closing statement. I know I ran a little bit over. Thank you very much for your time, and happy to take quick questions if possible. Otherwise, please see me out there. I'll be here all day.
Any questions to Jay? Thank you, Jay. This was really impressive.